In the light of recent amendments to Uzbekistan's law on gender-based and domestic violence and children's rights abuse, the H.E team decided to hold an interview with the EU ambassador to Uzbekistan, Charlotte Adriaen, to inquire about her thoughts on those amendments. As you know, the topic is well prepared. We're going to discuss gender-based violence and violence against children in Uzbekistan. And fortunately, we had an amendment to the law recently, which grants more rights to women and children in terms of violence that is related to them. Right, and now, what are your thoughts on those amendments?
So, my thoughts on this, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this. This is a very important topic. And I think the amendment, in fact, is a landmark. It's a very important amendment, and it's definitely opening up for, I think, a new, in fact, period of time where. And why is it so? I mean, we've seen that previously there were some loopholes in let's say the protection of women and children. And as EU, but I know also Uzbekistan has been working so much. I mean, this is such an important topic because of course women are 50% of the population. This is about, in fact, violence against women is a violence against human rights. Yes. And the same, in fact, for children. So for us, what I've seen is an enormous work from a cooperation, let's say, really important cooperation between the government, but also the parliament, together, in fact, with civil society, with activists, to improve the law and to make sure that women are protected in the future and that children are protected. And this is really key, because for having let's say, a peaceful society, you cannot have, a peaceful society if you have violence, accepted violence against women. This is not possible. Violence against, gender-based violence, violence against women and children, being it sexual or physical or economic, in fact, is not acceptable. It creates a society which is not at peace with itself and which cannot be sustainable. So this is also why it's really important. It's a progress. And we've seen, in my view, we've seen a lot of good progress on gender equality in Uzbekistan. We've seen a gender action plan. We know that there are a number of women, more than 30% in the parliament. This is important, yes. But you need more, in fact. And with this law, we see that this is again another step in the right direction for protecting women and for making sure that there is also accountability, that also that perpetrators, they have to be made accountable. They are, if there is criminality, they cannot be impunity. Yeah. So this is really important. Another thing which I think, I'm very happy to have the opportunity to talk a bit today, is that, of course, this is a step forward, but and for me this is really also a sort of a baseline, but now it needs to be implemented. And yes. In this case, EU is very happy to support. We're happy to support the implementation. We're happy to work with the civil society, but also with the government, also with the parliament. And of course, the activists have a really important role to play, and we're also happy to support them. Maybe just to say that, in fact, today we launched a new program exactly on empowerment of women. We will launch more programs in the future, support, in fact, and that should also be support for women activists, but women's civil society, but also for the government, in fact, in implementing in putting this into practice. And then maybe one thing, this is also about women being like you. It's important that the voice of women also is heard, and that means that it's good to work in civil society, but it's also it's really important that women get into decision-making positions, maybe also in the government. I think this is really for the future. It would be great to have to see women participating also in the decision-making processes.
Yeah, you're right that we're seeing more women in decision-making roles now in businesses. So they are influencing economics, they are influencing a law system. And in fact, Sayida Mirziyoyeva, who is the daughter of Shavkat Mirziyoyev, is the activist for female rights in Uzbekistan, right? So I've seen on your website the BOMCA program, which is related to mostly women in borderline areas of Uzbekistan. You're helping them to launch their businesses, to develop them. And what's your opinion on its efficiency, and what are your further plans? You mentioned that there are new programs. Can you give some details about them?
In fact, the BOMCA, I mean the Border Management Program for Central Asia, is a regional program which has been going on for years.
Yeah.
And during many of these years, we were working mainly with border guards, with the customs, and we were not that much working with civil society. But in 2017, we did an evaluation, and we realized that if you want to work at the borders, you have to work, in fact, also with the civil, in fact, with the communities on both sides of the border. We've seen how many, sometimes there are issues arising around the borders, so it's really important that we have this opportunity. And then what we also saw was that it was important also, definitely, not only to work with communities, but also to work with women. Women can have and we know this from experience, women can have an amazing role also in peace building.
Yes.
We know that from experiences from Latin America. And I'm not saying that this is exactly what we're doing at the border areas, because in fact I know that the programs are starting now, so I cannot tell you about the efficiency yet, but maybe in 1 year's time, let's see what's happening at the border. But definitely for us, it's really important that there is these opportunities also to work between civil society in dialogue also with the authorities, local authorities, national authorities. This is really important. And again, women have a really, strong role to play.
Actually, in border areas, there's more agricultural settings in which women are more engaged than in city activities.
Yes, but there's also a part which is many women also do trade. And this is also why it's important that on, at the border areas, and in fact, border crossings are also places where women travel forth and back. So this is also why it's been really important. In fact, in the BOMCA program, we worked a lot with the prosecutors. We did some gender training, and we've had some very interesting sessions, also trainings with a number of women from many sectors, also many the General Prosecutor's Office, but the customs, even the phytosanitary agencies. Lots of different profiles sitting together and talking about, okay, how can we ensure that, in fact, that minds are also moving, that the mindsets are moving. How can we support women, and how can we together make sure that, in fact, also women are protected? So this was really important. Now, on the new programs that we are launching, we are launching in fact, the EU, when we started our new, we have these 7 years programs, in fact, it was decided for all the world that all the new programs, 85% of all the new programs have to be gender responsive. So this is one thing. So in fact, within this thing, whatever you do, meaning you work on agriculture, you work on green transition, you work on digital, you work on public financial management, you work on anything, you have to think, how can this be gender responsive? How can this, and this is really important, because even for us internally in the EU, in all our embassies around the world, people have had to think, How can we make sure that what we're doing is good also for women, is empowering women? So this is one thing that we do, and this is, now we're going to have a look back and see how is this working, because we're halfway. So we're going to ask people now, we're going to start asking people, okay, how did you manage to make sure that your program on agriculture is gender responsive? So this is going to be very interesting. Another thing that we have said is that we will have specific programs for supporting gender empowerment. And as I mentioned, one of the ones that this morning was launched with several organizations, civil society organizations, which are women-led, and they will be working also with women and also working on actions to try to support, of course, in fact, women empowerment. Also with support on financial support, but also definitely on training. And this is really important that there is this. Some other programs will be working specifically on gender-based violence, in fact. Some will be working only on entrepreneurship. So there are different programs that will be starting. They have not started yet, but there are different ones that will be starting. And this is, for us also important that that there are possibilities also for many organizations also. We see I think we've seen now with the law, with the amendment to the law, how important it is to also, work with civil society and activists, female activists. That we've seen. With Fuza Kurolova, with Irina Matvienko, and together also with Nozima. We've seen how important, in fact, their role has been to have a dialogue. This is not only about imposing things. This is having a dialogue and showing how important. How we can dialogue and convince, argue for a change. What will be even more important, I think, also in the future, is also to understand why was it so difficult. Why did it take such a long time? What is it that that some people did not, in fact, want? Why is it so? And this will be also important. So they will be important also to do some research, and there will be also possibilities for us to do some research to understand better what is it that people are afraid of change. Yes. So also to, because minds don't change overnight. It's not because you now have a law that tomorrow all women and girls will be protected.
Yes.
In fact, this is going to take time, because it's not only. It will be, a lot of people will be involved to make sure that this law is implemented. You will have the prosecutor, you will have the investigators, the police. They have a very important role. But this is one thing, sort of the judiciary and the law enforcement bodies. But what is even more important is that the women themselves, that they are not afraid of telling that they are in fact abused, or that they have been beaten. Nobody wants to be beaten, but many, in fact, also this is also the case in Europe. Many women don't report, and of course, whenever that is happening, then the perpetrators will not be. Will not. It can continue, and this is, for the society, this is not good. So this is why it will be important to also understand better how this, why and how we can help support the very, impressive civil society in Uzbekistan to continue the work in this direction.
About systemic gender-based violence in our country, it's really hard to get rid of it even after amendments to the law, right? Are there any, suggestions for women of Uzbekistan, or what do you think should be done in our country to improve the situation with this problem?
First of all, let me just say maybe that unfortunately this situation with gender-based violence is not only in Uzbekistan.
Yes.
I mean, we know that this is, in Europe we're also fighting against gender-based violence. And in fact, one of the things that maybe is good to hear, because I was also looking where do we stand in Europe, and we're now looking into, in fact, evidence and data. And data are important. It's not all, but it's obvious that now in Europe we will get a report this year in 2023 that will give a bit of an information on what's happening, how big is it in Europe, and how has it evolved. And this is maybe one of the things that will be interesting with this law, which for me is a little bit, okay, this is, the amendment is groundbreaking, and then it will be important to see, to follow it, to monitor it. How is it being implemented? How is it changing? And how, and for that you need data.
Yes.
You need evidence. You need to have a look at, be open about it, have a look at it today. Raise awareness also, this is also really, have a look at it, how it stands today, and then have a look again in 1 year's time to see how it's evolving, and then maybe to adapt and see what can be done about it. I mean, one of the things that is important is that women need to know what their rights are. That's really important. And that's about awareness raising. Sometimes we know, I mean, this is not only here again, but this is also here. We know that some women don't even know that, I mean, that this is, that they can report, that they can say something, that this is not normal, that it's not normal to be beaten, or it's not normal for, I mean, there should be a, and women should be aware of their rights and thereby report on their rights. And of course, and then what will be important as well is to make sure that the new law is known also by, of course, by the law enforcement bodies, and that there is a change there as well. The judiciary, I mean, the prosecutors, the investigators, everybody, in fact, should be known about it. I know that, I mean, the Mass Media Foundation is doing a lot of campaign, and I think this is really important. Probably it will be important also to do it even more. I mean, so that the awareness is there. But definitely, this is something that, I mean, it will take time to change, but you need to find ways of, I mean, changing it. And maybe, I mean, one thing that, I mean, I think also that is really important, this is also what we're saying in Europe. Sometimes we're also saying, remember, in fact, women can also be part of, I mean, and should be part of the development in terms of even of economic development. I remember having listened to Christine Lagarde. Christine Lagarde, when she took up IMF, the International Monetary Fund, she made a speech where she said, if you have more employability of women, I mean, if women are more participating in the economic development of a country, you can in fact gain 1 to 2% of GDP, and then men are interested because this is about, increasing the GDP. But this is true. In fact, it's obvious that
they're going to contribute into the development of economy. They're the workforce who's just sitting at home.
Yes, exactly.
Right? We're losing money while not allowing women to work.
Yes. So this is sometimes that I mean, this is not the only reason, but definitely, I mean, it's important that women are educated, that they have the opportunity, they get the capacity, but also the capability to participate. And as I mean, this is also the President Mirziyoyev also mentioned that this is the year of education, quality education. And this is really important. We have in Europe, we have the European year for skills development, and we strongly believe that this is also really important, that women have the same opportunities as men, equal opportunities, but they definitely need also to be incentivized and get more, in fact, probably more opportunities than sometimes to make sure that they get up at the same level. I'm in in terms of decision making, we know that, I mean, it's not only in Uzbekistan that women are not at the same level. There are not as many women leaders as there are men leaders. But we're working on it. We have an action plan also in the EU. There is an action plan in Uzbekistan. This will be also really important to, in fact, continue monitoring how this is implemented in the future. How you ensure, in fact, that there are the opportunities that are equal, and maybe even more, so that you get to a equalizing factor that women get more opportunities. And this is really important also for the children. Yeah. And this is really important that they also see that they have an opportunity, not only the boys but also the girls.
Definitely. And then again about children, so you might be aware that in Uzbekistan physical and mental violence against children is normalized in the society mostly. If not in Tashkent, mostly in regions, obedience is practiced by children, so their rights are constantly violated. What steps can we take in order to improve the situation? Because in most of developed countries there are fines for physical violence against children, right? But in Uzbekistan this is still to be implemented and improved.
Well, you said it yourself. In fact, I mean, there is. I think you need to. No. Well, I mean, it's not only UNICEF; it's you. In fact, you are the ones. I mean, the youth. In fact, also today, I think needs to. I mean, this is something. Yes, I agree. I mean, this is something that you. I mean, this is something we're ready to support. But this is really something where you can do something. Ask for it. In fact, and yes, children should not. Should not have, be beaten. That there should not be violence against children. Children have a right, in fact, to have a childhood without violence. In fact, the children should enjoy their childhood and learn and get experiences which are positive. And with the positive experiences, they will participate.
Future.
Yes, and they will participate in developing positive societies. If they are beaten, I mean, honestly, this is, yes, I agree with you. You need to find ways of making this. It is unacceptable, and finding ways of in fact, and this is again about changing the mindset. So finding out what is it that what can we do to make sure that this is not happening in the future.
And then recently I came across a term of ecofeminism, right, in Uzbekistan. This is, I guess, a really important topic that should be raised, because most of our regional societies are rural, agricultural, and women are employed hugely in those sectors. And also the tragedy of Aral Sea and other climate cataclysms, and Uzbekistan being a double landlocked country which is affected severely by climate change. Are there any steps planned by European Union for, in this sphere, or what agenda can be made for this to tackle this problem?
So we're working at two levels. I mean, in fact, we're working at three levels, I would say. We're working. We have special focal sectors where we work with the government, but not only with the government, also with civil society and private sector. One of them is working, in fact, in agriculture, but eco-smart and eco-friendly digital agriculture, trying to, in fact, to make sure that the agriculture is also taking into account climate change, and obviously making sure that it's sustainable for the future. Because we know, in fact, that Central Asia, and in particular also Uzbekistan, is already very much affected by climate change, and will be even more in the future. So in that sector there is a lot of work being done also with the Ministry of Agriculture, with the water, on irrigation, afforestation for Aral Sea. There will be more coming, and also working, and this is where it's important that there are, I mean, that we're all working together, because I mean it's not
Yeah,
only
definitely.
EU, it's EU together with other partners, and of course also with government, also
Uzbekistan.
local government, and so this is important. This is one point. The other point is green transition, trying to see how you can in fact work on decarbonizing the economy, and this we will be also working definitely also.
Lastly, so I guess you've been there for long enough to see the progress that Uzbekistan has made, right? Since election of our president, we've taken a lot of steps to improvement in, well, in every sector, and especially the recent amendment to the law, right? Well, what can you say about it in general right now on progress that Uzbekistan has made, and particularly in fighting gender-based violence? Can you have you experienced that yourself, being here?
I can see, in fact, one of the things maybe that is really important is that, first of all, this is a result. It's a result of 1 year of, I understand, from fighting to get it through, and this is a really big result. And I think what we've seen also in terms of more transparency on what is happening, we've seen, I mean, there has been violence against young girls. In fact, there has been, I mean, the latest that we've seen in the media, I think, is also, in fact, the transparency that you see, and the then accountability of the perpetrators, and of, I mean, the questions coming up, and having a transparent discussion about it, and of course the follow-up on now criminalization, I mean, is already a very, very important step forward. And as you mentioned, the support also from the top to make this, I mean, to eradicate this, and is a really important step forward. This is as I mentioned, this is a landmark. Now, I mean, the importance will of course be to implement. One thing, as we always say, is
control it.
Yes, maybe have an action plan on how can this, because this is not enough. I mean, as I mentioned before, and you said it as well, this will be about changing mindsets. I mean, if this is, you will need to train, you will need to make aware, but you will need to train also definitely judges, investigators. I mean, there will be a need to move, in fact, an action plan, and then empower women as well, make them aware of their rights, and that change will also probably, I mean, it's something that it will not happen overnight.
Yeah.
But definitely it will be interesting also to see the evolution, but it needs to be monitored, and definitely an action plan that will be great.
So thank you a lot for your comments and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you very much.